Welcome. If you are ready to have a healthy relationship and wanting to learn what I consider the 8 essential ingredients to a healthy relationship, you are in the right place, and please stay tuned. We're going to keep this brief and to the point, and we're going to look at the key elements to the healthy relationships. I'm Robin Smith, and the administrator and founder of the Healthy Relationships Sisterhood Facebook group. And I so appreciate you being here. I'm going to be asking you to engage with me. There's great questions that I have for you, so I really hope that you take the opportunity to participate. And even if you're listening later to the recording, that you take the opportunity, because the more you engage and interact and answer the questions, the more you're going to learn about yourself. And when you get to look at other people's answers, you will learn that you're not alone, and also learn from one another. So let's launch into the 8 keys. And so what I consider number 1, and it was interesting because I just got asked kind of what I would consider the biggest learning for me in the last 8 or 10 years that I've been on this journey, and it was responsibility. And often responsibility has a negative connotation, but it doesn't mean blame. So just let's get that clear. In fact, I think of it as like the opposite of blame. So when we're taking responsibility for our experiences, for our issues, for our problems in our relationships, the relationship is much healthier. So you're taking responsibility for how you engage with what's in front of you. I hope that makes sense, and please feel free to leave any questions if I'm not making sense to you, or let me know if you cannot hear me. And if you can hear me, I hope you say hello and let me know you're here. I know there's some of you here on with me live right now. So responsibility is like I said, how you engage with the problem, how you invite the problem to continue or the issues to continue, how you stay in the game. Maybe you choose to keep it going, you don't end the issue. So we all have our own responsibility, and of course it's so easy to point the finger and say, they're doing this, they need to change that, they need therapy, and it's not me. But there's always 2 people in a relationship with 2 people, right? Everybody gets, as my teachers say, each person needs to take 100% responsibility for how they're showing up and how they're contributing to the relationship. So between 2 people, there's 200% responsibility. And when we blame, we're trying to give them part of our share. So my question for you about responsibility is, how are you keeping the current issues going in your relationship that you consider a problem? And go ahead and type what you think the answer is there. And I'm not going to tell you, obviously, if you're right or wrong. It's just your own inquiry for yourself to learn about. So an example might be, I keep it going by not saying that's not okay with me, or by enabling my partner to keep that bad habit going, right? So that would be one example of you taking responsibility for your part in the problem. Number 2, essential ingredients for what I consider for healthy relationships would be feedback. Is how you are open to feedback in your relationship, how you're open to learning in your relationship. Thanks, Rachel. I see you there. Lots of communication. Yes, communication is essential. And it's sort of like the underpinning of a lot of what we're talking about here, actually. Are you open to learning? Are you open to growing? I've been talking to a few of my clients this week, actually, about them feeling like their partners aren't really willing to address the issue. They're not willing to look at themselves, not willing to explore, to do the inner work that might be required to make changes in the relationship. So if you feel like, again, like it's not me, it's them, or if you feel like I've already done my work, or I've already been in therapy, and if you're not willing to look at yourself, then there's then you're hitting a ceiling. There's a limit to how much growth is possible. So I think each person in the relationship needs to be willing to look within, to do their inner work, needs to be willing to learn from one another, needs to be willing to receive feedback about how they're showing up, what they're saying, how they're behaving, and needs to be willing to grow. So for me, that's like a deal breaker if someone's not willing to do their part. So the question I have for you about feedback and openness to learning is, where do you find you're most resistant to learning or to growing in your relationship? So go ahead and put that in the comments section below. And number 3 tip for healthy relationships is, and by the way, this is a random order. I can't choose which is most important, and for each person I think it might differ. So I'm just putting them in this order today. So number 3, appreciation. And appreciation, total game changer. And again, I'm just keeping this really brief, but you may have heard that the number one reason people quit a job is because they don't feel appreciated enough. So it's a real important thing that everyone needs. Everyone needs to feel acknowledged and to be seen for how they're contributing in the relationship, even for little things sometimes, like thank you for doing the dishes, thanks for being on time, like you said you would. Thanks for picking up our kid or reading her a story before bed, so we can practice appreciation for one another, and that just, it lights up your heart when you get appreciated, because we want to know that we matter, and that how we're contributing matters and is being recognized. So you want to appreciate your partner's efforts in the relationship or in the family or in the home life. And that helps everyone feel better, honestly. So my question for you is, what type of appreciation would you like the most from either a partner or somebody in your relationship with? Maybe it's your employer. What type of appreciation would you like the most? Hey, Desiree, nice to see you. Desiree is sharing about the feedback that she doesn't like, which is about how she drives. Great. I understand that one. And, sometimes, especially as I was sharing with a client maybe today, that if you receive the same kind of feedback 3 times or more, especially from different people, it's probably a thing you need to pay attention to, right? It's probably a pattern that you do have. So we do want to be open to feedback as best we can. Number 4 on my list of top habits, practices to build healthy relationships is being able to know your needs and desires and then to express them. And it's a real thing. I was just talking to someone earlier that said, I don't necessarily know what I need, and so we need to do some self-inquiry. As I've shared in other videos, sometimes you were brought up in a way to kind of depress your needs or suppress your needs. So it might be real for you that you are not in touch with what you need or want. And so you might need to start looking into that. But it's really important to know what you need and want, and then to be able to express that so your partner knows how to meet you there, right? Because we're in a relationship to get certain needs met. We wouldn't be in one if we didn't have, certain needs we want from the relationship that we cannot meet on our own. So what are those needs for you? So that's my question for you. What is one need you have from your relationship, and especially one that you have not yet expressed or made known very clearly to your partner? Go ahead and put that in the comment section. Okay, moving on. Number 5. Boundaries, or also known as limits. And this is sort of like needs and desires, where you need to be able to know yourself well enough to know where your limits lie, where you draw the line, right? Like what's okay and what's not okay with you. And again, if you were brought up in a way to deny your limits, or your limits and boundaries were constantly being overridden by your caregivers or somebody else in the family or someone close to you, you may have learned that your boundaries or limits didn't matter, or that it wasn't safe in a way to have them. So to be in a healthy relationship, you really do need to have healthy boundaries. You need to know what's okay with you and what's not. And when a boundary is crossed, you need to be able to express that. And if you don't, that's when anger and resentment can be built up. You can't expect someone to know, your needs and desires or your boundaries and limits if you don't express them, right? That's where I was saying earlier, communication is pretty much underlying every one of these. So my question for you, and please put it in the comment section, is what's one boundary that you need to communicate or communicate more clearly if you find it's getting crossed too often or at all, right? We never want any boundary to be crossed, but especially if we've communicated it, that says that it wasn't communicated clearly, or this person cannot honor my boundary, and then that's not healthy to stay in that kind of relationship. Okay, moving on. Number 6, feelings. So being able to, like the other two I just mentioned, being able to know your feelings and being able to express what they are, and ideally in the moment, right? Or as close to the moment as you can. Because when we don't express our true feelings, what can happen? They can just blow up later, right? If you just suppress them, you hold back, you shut it down, and then later, like out of the blue, you just explode, right? And people are like, what the heck was that about? Like they didn't know because you weren't sharing what was happening for you. So it's part of being in integrity, is knowing how you feel and expressing that. It doesn't mean you're hurting people with your feelings. It means you're just sharing, I feel angry, or I feel sad, or you're letting your actual sadness come through. So my question for you is, what feeling is the hardest for you to express in your relationship? Go ahead and put that in the comment section. And then Desiree says, I love being appreciated. That includes details about how it impacted them. Yes, I'm a big fan of that too. The more nuanced you can be about your appreciation, the more the person will feel seen by you. So not just you look pretty, but oh, I love how you did your hair. It really shows off your eyes, that type of thing. Thanks for that. Okay, we're moving on to number 7. Humility. You've heard me teach about humility here, and if you're following me on Instagram, perhaps there as well. I think humility is another huge game changer. It's completely changed how I show up in my relationships, and all of them. And so humility is tied into that. I think it was number 2, around giving or receiving feedback and being open to learning. So when we're humble, we receive feedback even when it's not delivered in the most perfect way. We're willing to receive it. We're willing to look at ourselves, and especially we're willing to look at how we could improve, or any mistakes. I don't think things are hard and fast mistakes, but anything you could have done better. Anything maybe you might regret doing, anything you'd like to change. So when we're humble, we are willing to not be right. We're willing to be corrected. We're willing to not know the answer. We're willing to apologize if we have regret about what we said or did. All those are parts of humility, and that can go a really long way. It's part of repairing kind of a break in connection in your relationship. So you have to have humility to be able to come back together and to really have a, return to the sweetness. Super important. So my question for you is, what type of humility is hardest for you? I mentioned several things. So is there one of those that's hardest, like admitting you don't know the answer, or apologizing, or admitting you were, wrong or made a mistake? So please put that in the question box, or the comment box below. And the last one, number 8, is trust, right? I hear this all the time from people who join this group, and you answer these questions for me to get into the group. I ask you, what's the biggest challenge for you? And you often will say trust. And I think I did a video about that here. And trust, again, like some of the other things that I mentioned earlier, can become an issue if you had boundaries crossed in your early childhood life, or even later in childhood or teenagehood. So if you've been disrespected, if you've been mistreated, if you've been abused, not considered or hurt, then it would be understandable that you would have trust issues. And of course, when we have trust issues in our intimate adult relationships, it really affects our ability to be intimate, to be relaxed, to be open. And being relaxed and open and vulnerable which I would add would be a good number 9, is really important to have a healthy relationship. So let's say number 8 is like trust and vulnerability. They're going to go together. So you want to be able to be open and sharing, and vulnerability would come with number 4 and 5 and 6, like expressing your needs and desires and your boundaries and your feelings. All of that is part of vulnerability too. So my question for you, my last question for you, is what about your partner or any other significant relationship do you least trust? Where do you need to work on trust? So these, seem very straightforward, but they're like, each of these could be a huge chapter in a book. It's really not so simple. They're all complicated and nuanced. And so, consider all of these and know that there's much more to the picture. I wanted to keep it brief tonight and kind of give you a rundown. But, if you're finding challenge in any one of these areas, if you're finding blocks or you feel really stuck with yourself or in an intimate relationship, please let me know. Please reach out. I am offering a few more what I call relationship breakthrough sessions. I've got them scheduled. I've put a link in with this video in the description, so you could go there. And there's a link to my online calendar, so you can sign up for a free session where we really look at what you're most wanting, like what's ultimate for you in your relationship, either to yourself or another, and then where you're most stuck, where your biggest obstacles are. And then my job in that session is to kind of lay out a plan for you to help you see like how to get from where you are to where you want to be. So you're going to get a lot out of that session, and it's definitely an opportunity to see if working together might be a good fit, and then we can talk about that as well. There's absolutely no pressure to do that, however, but it's really a gift that I really enjoy these sessions. So I hope you take advantage of that and use it as an opportunity to get some clarity and to consider how you can take the next steps for yourself in creating healthy relationships in all these ways that I've mentioned. So I hope to see you there, and thanks again for watching. Please send your friends here. Let them know this is available. Our group here has, in the Healthy Relationship Sisterhood, if you're not here, that there's a lot of good free material for everybody here. So please take advantage of that, and let me know if you have any questions or suggestions for what you'd like me to teach about next. Hope you have a lovely day or evening whenever you're watching. Namaste.